Let's look at flights. Um, so right now there's no flights listed. There may be one or many flights associated with a trip. If you'd like to add a new flight associated with this trip, you can just click New Flight. A lot of these fields should be self-explanatory. You're going to enter the flight number and the airline, departure and arrival airport. Guatemala is going to come up first. Departure date, time. You're going to want to be very specific just to standardize the times. So you're going to want to put in the format hour, colon, minute, space, AM or PM, like that. And if you don't, it'll just give you a little nudge to make sure that you're doing that correctly.
On the very top, there's a Going to Guatemala checkbox. Please check that only if the flight is the final leg of a person's travel from the US or other country to Guatemala. So what that means is that you should only select the Going to Guatemala checkbox if your arrival airport is somewhere in Guatemala. In addition to that, let's talk a little bit about transit codes. For the new system, we have done away with the Friday to Friday or Saturday to Saturday transit codes. What this means is that there are now 4 codes. We feel it's simpler and easier. The first code would be when a person is taking a flight that is not considered the official team flight, and they will need a separate transport setup. And that code will assign a transit fee to the volunteer. We as staff will verify that those transit codes are okay and approve those, and then the volunteer will then owe the $25 transit fee for not traveling with the group. The other selection is official team bus. Those are used for flights coming into Guatemala where the majority of your team is there, and as usual, Faith and Practice will set up group transportation for that flight. In addition to that, the other flight code would be our vol code, which is the time when a volunteer is setting up their own transportation. They would not be charged the $25 fee, but they will need to set up their own transportation if they are not traveling with the group. The fourth and final code is a somewhat new code that we're adding this year, and that is connecting flight. Please select connecting flight for any flight that is not going into Guatemala. Select connecting flight for someone's flight, say from Portland to Houston, where they will then meet up with the team and take the official flight from Houston down to Guatemala. One other thing to note is the customs required checkbox. Please check that on any flights where customs is going to be required, where you will be checking trunks of supplies with your team, so that we are aware that we need to be ready to help you through customs on that particular flight.
The one other thing I would just indicate while we're here is if you see a little red indicator here, that just means it's a required field. So this flight by default is associated with this trip, and you can just leave it that way. Also, if you're entering a lot of data, you can hit save and then or you can just hit save and new to immediately start working on another record, which may be handy if you like. So to add a new passenger, once you have the flight here, and again, this is just a sample flight, so a lot of this data is going to be blank that would look more filled out. To add a new passenger, you're just going to go to the flight and then hit new passenger. And this is going to associate people with this particular flight. This is a very simple screen. So the flight is already filled out. This just says 1, but on your screen, it's going to have more information. So it'll probably say something more like United Airlines Flight 935. And then you're just going to enter the trip candidate here. This is very similar to how you slot people. You're just going to pick the lookup window, type in the trip number, and this is going to give you a list of who is associated with this trip. So you can just pick someone, and then that will indicate that they are a passenger. I'll create just a sample record here, which we can then delete out. So now you can see I've added this person as a passenger on that flight, and it's that simple. If you would like to add more than one passenger to the flight, when you are hitting edit and going through, you can then just hit save and new to just go straight into adding another person and then another and then another. That might speed things up a little bit for you if you're adding a bunch of people all at once. So from the flight screen, you can see a list of passengers. And then from the trip screen, you can see a list of flights. So that's how that works at the moment.